Welcome to another training video from XMPRO. Today we will be looking at data grid and how to use it in App Designer. So I have a page here which, as you can see, is blank, but I want to display some data from my data source in a grid format. What I can do is I can search for the grid control. It's called data grid, and I can drag it across. Now, data grid, as you know, displays your data in rows and cells format. It also allows you to, for example, sort, filter, or add some paging options to the data. And we will look at all of them just now. But the first thing I need to do is, as you can see, my data grid, I just dragged it, but it's empty. It needs some data. So I need to bind it to a data source. And as explained in another video on how to use data sources, I have already created a data source, which I'm now going to bind to my data grid, like that. Now, if I save it without making any other change, and I just refresh this page, the runtime view of this page, you will see I have a data grid, and it is loading up all the data from my data source. Now, let's see what other options we have over here. So if I pop into the appearance section, I have options to control if the grid should have an outer border. Let's say I don't want it. I have option to choose if the header should be visible or not. I have option to choose if the column lines should be visible or not, and I'm going to remove them. It's these lines. And then there are row lines, which you can see going across over here. And lastly, if the control should be visible at all or not. So those are my appearance options. I'll quickly show you the changes we made. As you can see, the outer border is gone and the column lines are gone. So let's go ahead and see what else we can do. In behavior, we have a couple of options, starting with the Crud operation. Basically, should the user be allowed to add, delete, or update the data in the grid? If the connector you're using supports it, you can choose these. And if you say the user should be allowed to update, you are then going to be asked for what edit mode you want to use. And there are three options: batch, cell, and row. Basically, if you choose cell, each cell is editable at a time. If you choose row, the whole row is editable at a time. And in batch, you can change multiple rows and then save in one go. So I'll keep it as cell. Next, I have options for column filtering or row filtering. I'll enable those and you'll be able to see what they look like. I'm going to save now, and I'll refresh over here to see what changes I made. You can see now there is an option to delete a row. There is also an option to change or update a value. When I click on a cell, because I chose cell mode, I have to click on a cell and then it becomes editable. I also have filtering options, like if I only want to see a certain value. Right. Next, we also have options for paging. If I choose I want to page, I'll have to give a page size, but if I say I only want to see 5 records at a time, I can do that by saving that and then refreshing over here. It will then display me pages which I can use to navigate through my data. Lastly, there are options if you want to use a grouping, and there's also an advanced option to choose if you want to have your columns automatically assigned a certain width based on their content. Now let's move on from behavior and into the column section at the end. This section basically displays a list of columns that are being sent to you from your data source. And you can choose a certain column. I'll maximize my screen for that. You can choose a certain column, and then you have a few options per column, like should the column be visible or not, what should be the caption for that column. That is a friendly name that should appear in the header. You can also choose the value of that column should be left or right aligned or center aligned. And lastly, you have a width option where you can specify a number to say that the width of that column should not be auto-generated but be fixed to the number you provide. Having configured your columns, one last option you have here is if you want to move or change the order in which these columns appear in your grid. You can do so by using these arrows and moving a column up or down. And the order in which they appear in your grid will also change. So this was how to use data grid control. Thank you for watching.